Rejoice, fellow citizens of the Imperium!
For we don't need this Codex anymore! Welcome to the new hotness of the Imperial Guard.
Stand right!
So many people know me as a Tau player, a primarily Tau player, and you've rarely seen me play anything else on this channel. However, I actually have a fairly large Guard collection. I actually really love the Imperial Guard. It is a fantastic army, cool theme, and how can you not get behind regular humans being brave in the face of adversity and going into battle with nothing else but a lasgun and some poor armor? Welcome to what we're calling a Codex reaction to the new Imperial Guard Codex. Now, many people do full-on reviews going through every single data sheet in here and taking an hour or two to do so. We're not gonna do that. What we are doing is a Codex reaction where we give you our impressions of what has changed in here, what we love about it, and what you might like about it too. First of all, if you're new to 40k and not familiar with who the Guard are, or the Astra Militarum as their official name is, the Guard are literally human soldiers, unaugmented. They're not super soldiers, they don't have super fancy armor. They are regular humans drafted or volunteered into the military complex of the Imperium. They are the first and last line of defense against Xenos, chaos, and everything in between. The models and tactics are heavily inspired by traditional World War I and World War II. For instance, the Lehman Russ tank, the mainstay of the Imperial Guard, is very much evocative of an old World War I tank, whereas some of the newer weapons and newer guns are very much World War II. They rely heavily on massed infantry, backed up by heavy guns, tanks, and artillery. I actually started collecting Imperial Guard at the beginning of 6th edition. I was building up my Tau collection. I really wanted an allied force of something else, something to give myself some variety to play with. And I was really eyeing the Guard. At that time, you could ally any force with anybody. So I was really looking forward to building up a Guard unit and adding them in as allies to my Tau. I built out some guys, I modified guns and insignia, and then they took away all of that with the new edition of the game, and you no longer can ally Guard with Tau. But I wasn't to be stopped. I still built out my collection because I really do love the theme, the aesthetic, and how they play. My main 3 armies that I play are Tau, Imperial Guard, and Genestealer cults. And until recently with the new Tau Codex, all 3 of those were what you could consider bottom of the heap. And so, as we draw to the end of almost all the codexes being released for this edition of the game, we come to one of the last ones to be released, the Imperial Guard, the Astra Militarum. They're here and they're beautiful. I'm incredibly impressed by this codex. I feel it is incredibly flavorful, narrative, while also giving you very cool, interesting tools to play with and making your army versatile as possible. They've managed to make Guard feel unique. They feel like, in my opinion, how they should play. Instead of just another shooting army that does better or worse than another shooting army, such as my Tau, they actually play very unique. They've also given you some very interesting tools in this codex in how you build your army that makes it unique to each player, and you can customize your army to be exactly how you feel the Imperial Guard should play. We're talking, of course, about regimental doctrines. So traditionally, with almost every single army in 40k, you pick your faction, Tau, Space Marines, whatever, and then you pick your sub-faction within it. They can be called chapters, or seps, or regiments, or whatever it is. And usually that gives you a special bonus for all of those units that you go down a certain type of style. You usually stick to one lane, and you don't deviate from it. That is not true in this codex. For one of the first times in a long time, there is no seps, regiments, or anything. Instead, when you build your army, you simply choose 2 bonuses from a list that are evocative of different regiments. There are things very similar to previous, like the Cult of Sacrifice, which is very inspired by Creed Guardsmen, which gives you +1 to hit if your unit is damaged. Or, my favorite, Armored Superiority, allowing all your vehicles to count as multiple models for holding objectives. So if you want to play infantry heavy, they got you there, and if you want to play vehicle heavy, they've got you there too. Or if you want to play a mix of them both. Many people were wondering if Hammer of the Emperor is gone. Hammer of the Emperor is a quick rule that was introduced during a balance update from Games Workshop to try to uplift some of the weaker performing armies. And Imperial Guard got a really great one. Every single hit roll of 6 automatically wounds. Really great for lots of volume of fire. Surprisingly, that's still in here in the Codex. If you don't take any of those regimental abilities, you can instead have the army-wide bonus Born Soldiers, which allows you to essentially automatically wound on 6s. And before anyone asks, yes, until they update the balanced data slate, as of this recording, Armor of Contempt for vehicles and not getting any negatives to out of line of sight fire is still in effect for this army. So who knows if they'll update that or change that in the next balanced data slate, but I would expect a FAQ to clarify that very soon. They have taken a look and updated almost every single profile in this army. Lots of the guns are better or have more of a specific use. Previously, there was some weapons you always took because they were clearly the better option, and some weapons you never took because they were never the better option, such as the humble Vanquisher cannon or maybe the deathstrike missile. Now though, those clearly have a case. I feel like they well designed each weapon to feel like it has a different use and push them toward their different strengths. For instance, the Vanquisher cannon is now pretty much a slightly worse version of a railgun from the Tau. It's a little annoying, gotta be honest, but it's pretty cool. Or the deathstrike missile launcher. Previously, no one ever took it because there was kinda no point. It either didn't do enough damage or it was so unreliable of how to shoot it that you never got to anyways. Now though, they've changed the rules for it so that it has an incredible potential, but you might never shoot it, and that's okay. How they've designed the rules for it has made it incredibly versatile, but also a very unique mechanic. Basically, in your command phase, you pick a target anywhere on the board. The next command phase, you can either fire it at that target or move it around. If you fire it, everything within 3 inches gets a bucket full of mortal wounds. For instance, on a 6, you actually deal 12 mortal wounds, which is crazy cool. But your opponent does get a turn of foreknowledge of where it's gonna go, so they have a chance to move away from it. But you don't have to fire it when it comes to your turn. You can just move it around. So I could definitely imagine following around leaders with it and threatening them, and you can do some really interesting board control. What if you took a unit of guardsmen, put them on an objective marker, and said, oh yes, berserkers, you can charge those guardsmen if you want, you'll probably kill them. However, even if you do, next turn, you're dying from the deathstrike missile that's landing right on their target. Very evocative of the guard. A lot of profiles have changed. There's a few that are missing now. We can confirm that Yarok is gone, Pask is gone, and Crusaders are gone. Crusaders I never quite understood. They never quite fit the army. I never quite understood what they were there to do. Pask and Yarok is interesting because it means there's very few named characters left in this book, but it does kind of make sense lore-wise because it has been many years in the lore and technically I guess they should be dead, although I'm very fascinated to know what happened to Yarok. Last we saw Pask, he was actually fighting the Tau. Perhaps the Tau killed him? Infantry are very different. You now have your regular infantry squad. There's no conscripts. There's no giant blobs of 40 men. They're all in units of 10. There's one regular squad of infantry to represent any kind of regiment you want. But then you can also take specific squads of infantry that are Krieg squad, Cadian squad, Katachin squad that have slight bonuses, but they're not that different from the regular guardsmen. The orders mechanic that traditionally is part of the guard is still here. Did a really cool job of how they put it on different units. There's 3 different types of orders now. Orders that are given from officers towards men to do things, classic things like move, and first rank fire, second rank fire. However, commissars can now give special orders called prefectus orders that are basically to do with morale and not running away from a fight and stuff like that. Kinda cool. And then of course you have your tank commanders that can give tank orders, mechanized orders. Tanks have gone through some really cool changes to make them way more useful. I really like the turret ability, basically the turret weapon on Leman Russes and other tanks. Gets blanket +1 to hit. One of the challenges with playing guard was you had all these cool tanks, but if the enemy just touched you, the unit in close combat, suddenly that tank is not able to fire in close combat, or firing at -1, or firing at an unoptimal target. Now, you can actually fire that turret weapon at a completely different target, even though you've got a unit in close combat. So you can fire heavy bolters and flamers at the unit that's trying to hack at your hatches, but you can fire the big giant Gatling gun or Vanquisher turret at something across the table. Very flavorful, very effective, super versatile. Versatile, I think, is probably one of the key things about this codex. It gives you a lot of tools to do a lot of things. There's also some incredibly narrative things in it. I mentioned the deathstrike, which is narrative and fun, but useful. But there's also, for instance, one of my favorite stratagems, an officer of the fleet. You can take attaches to command squads, and an officer of the fleet is one of them. An officer of the fleet allows you to use a stratagem delaying the enemy reinforcements for a turn. So if they've got a unit coming in that they need to come in on a turn, you can just use a stratagem and say, nope, you can't come in this turn, you have to come in next turn. Which is situational, sure, but so cool. Or field promotion. Your warlord dies, you can suddenly nominate another model to be your warlord, and they don't get points for killing your warlord until they kill the other one. It's incredibly flavorful and effective and versatile. Quite a few of the stratagems refer to a specific type of unit, so this is where you'll get your specific flavor if you're wanting to run all Cadian or all Krieg or something like that. Some of the stratagems specifically refer to use this on a Cadian unit. For instance, Cadia stands, the equivalent of a transhuman for a Cadian unit. I'm looking forward to taking my Imperial Guard out for a stroll and trying them out. I've never really gotten to play my Imperial Guard on the channel. I've gotten to play other people's Imperial Guard on the channel, but I'm looking forward to taking this out. In fact, I actually have a game coming up very soon. We're gonna use the new Codex against someone who's been on the channel before, coming in from out of town. I'm looking forward to having him on the channel. You know who you are, bring it on. Let's do it. My last thought is in the design of the actual Codex. I actually think they've done a better job designing even how it's laid out. For instance, one of my favorite new things of the new Codex, the Crusade rules are at the back of the book. Are you excited about the Guard? Are you excited for what it's in store for these defenders of humanity? Let us know in the comments below. And of course, please subscribe. It goes a long way to help supporting the channel. Or you can even consider joining our Patreon or YouTube membership for some exclusive content, Discord access, and other things like that. And until we see you next time, play on.